and welcome today to Gifted in Real Life. We have a guest with us today, Mike Williams from Lucid Point Equity. Mike, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me so much. How you doing today?
Good, I'm doing well.
Good.
So before we get too much into the discussion, why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and what it is that you do?
All right, so my name is Mike Williams. I'm originally from St. Louis, Missouri. I moved to Atlanta in 2011 to attend Morehouse College. Didn't really like college that much, so I ended up dropping out. After that, I really ventured into all types of things. I finally stumbled across Bitcoin in 2016, which kind of opened my eyes up to a lot of things. So I was one of those guys that was buying Bitcoin at $1,000, trying to tell everybody to buy it, hey, buy it, hey, buy it. And then once it went from $1,000 to $20,000, my phone couldn't stop ringing. So that was kind of my intro into finance. From there, I kind of started to dive into everything. And I came across contracts, and I realized we enter into contracts every day. So I'm like, okay, if I enter into a contract every day and I don't realize, or I don't know what makes a contract valid, or what type of contracts I'm entering, I need to know this stuff inside out. And so once I figured out that rabbit hole, it just kind of led me to where I'm at now. Me and my brother, we have Lucid Point Equity, which started off as a credit repair company, which our main focus was really just bringing financial literacy to the Black community, which we kind of felt like credit was the first way for us to segue into just getting people to listen. And now we ventured into doing estate planning, which pretty much brought me back to my rabbit hole of 2018. It kind of just brought everything full circle for me now. So that's where we at with it.
Wow, that's a lot to take in. Wow, that's a lot of stuff.
Yep.
So let me take a step back. You mentioned that you were a student at Morehouse, and
Yep.
Morehouse is a prestigious college in Atlanta, Georgia, for all men, for African-American men. Tell me just a little bit about your educational background. Like, what led you to going to Morehouse? Tell me a little bit about what you were like as a student. And then I'm going to get into how your mom may have received you, letting her know that, hey, I'm jumping out of
absolutely.
Morehouse.
So ever since I was a small child, like I just kind of excelled at education. I was one of those kids that always had like straight A's, 4.0s all the time.
So start with your intro, your entrance into school. Tell us about that.
So previous to this call, we were just talking about this. When I was probably around 3 or 4, I can't remember my exact age. I remember my mom taking me to a facility where I would test so I could go to school early, because I guess she just seen something in me like, okay, hey, my son's kind of smart. I want to put him in school right now. And so I remember, and to this day, I can remember just my little legs walking up the stairs to this big building, and I'm just sitting in this little office with this lady, and I had some type of test, and I know by the end of the test, she just like, hey, you passed with flying colors. And of course, at 3, 4 years old, I don't know what that means. I'm just like, okay, well, I guess I did good. And so from there, I mean, in elementary, middle school, I always was a 4.0 student, me and my brother. Our parents just kind of just stressed that on us. Hey, make sure that you're doing good in school, blah, blah, blah. And actually, when we were in elementary school, my brother and I had a rap group called GPA, which stood for Gentlemen Producing A's.
Love it.
Yeah. So that was one thing that I loved, just because we just made music about, you know, what you would as a middle school or elementary school, going to school, getting good grades, maybe talking about the girls in the class, or I'm going to go play basketball after school, whatever the case is. So that was my intro to that. Once I got to high school, I ended up going to a private high school called the Smet Jesuit High School. It's in Creveport, Missouri. And it was an all boys school, so that kind of changed my outlook on education in general. Just because I'm like, okay, 95% of this school is white. I'm the only Black kid here. We had A-track classes, B-track classes, and honors classes. And I was pretty much the only Black kid that was in all A-track and honors classes. Like most of my friends that were at school that played on the football team with me or the basketball team with me, I would only get to see them at lunch or at practice, or maybe if we had like some type of I can't think of the word right now. Not core classes, but you know, the other type
electives.
Of classes. Yeah, elective classes. I would see them in elective classes and things like that, but not really my core classes, just because they were in B-track classes. And so My junior year, I ended up taking the ACT because in Missouri we don't have to take the SAT, we just take the ACT. So my junior year, I took the ACT. My first time I scored a 27 on it. So at that point, I think I scored in probably like I don't remember, maybe like the top 10% of my class or something like that. So I knew, okay, I'm pretty much done. I think my GPA was maybe like a 3.5, 3.6, something like that. So going into my senior year, I knew I'm like, okay, I'm going somewhere for school because I had these high test scores. I got these high grades. So somebody gonna want me, right? And so senior year comes, you getting all the mail from these schools. I applied pretty much everywhere. Like I was saying before the call, I had interest from like a lot of Ivy League schools, from Harvard, Princeton, University of Pennsylvania, Yale, Vanderbilt, all types of different schools. I didn't end up getting accepted into any of them, but it was a nice experience getting interviewed by them and just feeling like, okay, I am smart enough to be on the same level of, you have Harvard dropouts. It's like Bill Gates and Mark
Zuckerberg.
Zuckerberg, all of
Yeah.
those type of people. So I'm like,
All of
okay,
them.
yeah. So I'm looking at myself like, okay, I must be on this level of people, right?
Yeah.
And so what ended up happening was didn't get accepted to any of those schools. I was going to end up going to the University of Missouri just because they gave me a lot of money to go there. And like at the last second, for some reason, my mom is just searching through all the mail that's coming through from all these colleges. Hey, we want you to apply here. Hey, we're going to give you some scholarship money here, all of that type of stuff. And at the bottom of this pile, I had a letter from Morehouse saying, hey, we want to offer you a full tuition academic scholarship. And I'm like, okay. I mean, Mizzou is cheaper than Morehouse, but nobody else is giving me a full tuition academic scholarship. So let me at least entertain and see what's going on. So I end up going down there and shadowing one of the students that was actually from St. Louis, and I fell in love. I'm just like, okay, this is where I need to be at. And so that's how I end up going to Morehouse.
Wow. Wow, that's exciting. So
Right.
I want to back it up further still because we are the Gifted in Real Life podcast. And I just want to make some points because I do think that when it comes to giftedness, a lot of gifted people are never identified. Like there's a statistic out there that I read that about 230 million adults are walking around who fit this criteria and they don't even know it.
Mhm.
And the reason that's important is because these individuals have certain characteristics or idiosyncrasies that they have in life. And sometimes they can be roadblocks for them
Yep.
and they don't even know it. And if you did know, you know, there's just power in knowing you can
Absolutely.
address things. So I just want to talk about your experience in elementary school. So you were a smart kid. Tell me about did you feel any pressure socially to sort of mask that or not
Um,
let people know that you were so smart? Do you feel like you ever got teased about it or were given a hard time by any of your peers?
I think that I was one of the ones who made it out lucky just because I always consider myself to be a cool nerd. Like unless you really went to school with me, you would never know that I have like a super nerdy brain unless you sat in class with me and like, what this dude answering all these questions, like what's going on? So I feel like I thank God that I didn't have to go through like the abuse that I know some other kids that I went to school with. I'm like, okay, I can see why they kind of picking on you because yeah, you are smart, but you're not really fitting in with what's going on here. I just wasn't one of those ones to bully because I'm like, okay, well, I'm smart with you, so I can't bully you on that. I can't bully you like, hey, smart guy, because I'm the smart guy too. So I think that I might have dodged a bully with that because I really didn't get picked on. I was just kind of one of those guys that was cool, but I was smart as well.
Okay,
So that was just one of my characteristics.
good, good. And so what led to you going to the private school in middle school as opposed to just the neighborhood school?
So middle school, I was still in public school. I didn't go to private school until high school.
Oh, okay.
And what happened was, well, first of all, but the public school system was just becoming too easy for me. I think my parents realized that like it didn't really take much work for me to get straight A's. Like they didn't have to ask me, did you do your homework? I mean, I did my homework when I first got home from school, but it only took me 30 minutes. So now I'm outside playing for the rest of the day. And so I think it was that. And then there was another incident where my mom actually ended up coming up to my middle school. And it's funny when I look back on it now because my middle school was more populated than my high school. Like it was
Mm-hmm.
probably like 2,000 kids or maybe 2,200 kids at my middle school when I went there. Yeah, right, right,
Yeah, I used to be a middle school principal, and
yeah,
that's a big middle school.
right, right. It was a lot of kids there. So when I went to high school, I think we had maybe 1,200 kids in the school. So
Hmm,
I'm like, how is it less kids at this high school than it is in middle school? Whatever. But
private.
one time she came up there and some girls were doing something in the hall, like having a like loud, like having a fight or something in the hall, and she seen it and she just like, yeah, no, I'm not sending you to the high school because all the people that were in middle school with me were the people that went to my local high school. And she like, nah, we're not doing that. And so from there, I think the high school that I end up winning to that I end up going to is a high school that another one of our family friends, he was going to high school at the time there, and I think he played on the football team. He was actually one of the people that helped win like their first state championship and all of that stuff. Like he ended up going to Notre Dame to play football and all that after there. And so that was kind of like the reason why I ended up going to that school, because we already had somebody who had went there. They tell my parents, yeah, you need to send them here, all of that stuff. And so that's how I ended up going to that private high school.
Okay. So, did you participate in sports in high school?
Yep. Yep. So I played basketball and football in high school. Played
And did you want to continue that in college?
no.
No. Good.
Um, I had some offers, mostly from like smaller like D2 or like D3 schools. And the way that I looked at it is I didn't have any plans on going pro with football, just because like my pro dreams for my pro athlete dreams have been gone since I was a little kid, just because I was making music when I was like 7 years old. I wrote my first song. So music was really my first love. Like I played sports before I started making music, but once I started making music, like it just took over everything else that I wanted to do. So like my pro sports dreams have been gone. And I didn't want to go to some small school and just be out in the middle of nowhere just to say that I played football or I got a football scholarship, because I feel like that happens a lot of times where it's like, okay, well, I don't have really any other options. So let me just go ahead and go to the school. Where with me, I'm like, okay, football is not my strength. My strength is right here. So this is what's going to get me to school.
Right. That's good. And now, do you feel like you came to that realization on your own, or did your parents have a role in helping you to figure that out?
I think it was something I came to on my own, only because like if you ask my pops definitely wanted me to play football somewhere. And it wasn't like something that was mandatory. But I'm pretty sure if he had it his way, I probably could have went harder with football and played football somewhere. But for me personally, I was just like, okay, it's not something that's mandatory. Like I don't, this is not my path to success. I can use my brain to do that. So I just kind of had made my mind up. And I was a stubborn kid too, which I'm pretty sure I'm still stubborn now. I was just like one of those people where once my mind was made up, that was it. That's it.
So back to the music thing. When is your first memory that it was something that you had a really strong interest in and that you were good at?
So my dad ended up taking us to something called the Black Expo that they have in St. Louis every year. It's basically like how do I describe it? I guess it's just like an event where it's a lot of like Black business owners and stuff. They come in.
Yeah, that's what it's like, like a
Yeah,
vendor fair,
yeah,
right?
it's like a vendor fair. So he took us to that when I was probably like 7 years old. And it's so random. It's so random. It was a group there called I guess they were bounty hunters, right? Right. Check this out. They were bounty hunters, but they had put together a CD. And on this CD, so random, so random. They were bounty hunters that put together a CD. And I remember one of the songs on there was like, "You can run, but you just can't hide." I'm like, what? Right. But check this out. At the end of the CD, they had instrumentals to the songs that they had just rapped over. So I started listening to the instrumentals at the end of the CD and I just started writing. And from there, it just kind of picked up. So that was like my first introduction to music. Like I just was listening to the CD, and I'm pretty sure me and my brother were just sitting there laughing at whatever we were listening to. But at the end of it, they just had instrumentals, and I don't know what moved me to start writing, but I just started writing to the instrumental.
Oh, so do you play any instruments?
Nope, don't play any
Okay.
instruments.
All right. So do you still do music now?
No, I don't. I haven't actually made music probably since 2016, 2017 is when I stopped making music. And it was cool. I still love music, but what I started to realize is the higher I started going up into the industry, there's a lot of weird stuff that was going on that I didn't necessarily agree with. And I was just like, it's not for me.
I understand.
For
I
somebody, it's not
understand.
for me.
Right. So, all right. So you go to the new private high school. What were some of the biggest differences and or challenges that you had coming from the public school going to the private school?
Um, Definitely at first, just a culture shock of being in school with mostly white people now, especially when my elementary school and middle school, we have white people there, but it's like a handful of them. Like you could probably count on two hands how many is there. So that was definitely my first just shock, trying to figure out like, okay, how do these people communicate? Like I'm used to communicating with my people, but okay, do they understand when I say this? Like, do you get my terminology? If I do this, are you gonna feel some type of way? Like, am I rubbing you wrong? So it was just kind of just feeling people out, trying to figure out, okay, I never been around this many white people at one time. So
So was it the same with teachers and students, or was there a difference?
uh I mean a difference is because most teachers are white anyways, even in the public school system. Yeah, even in the public school system. So it's like being taught by white people, I was already kind of used to that. But being in class with them and having a lot of them as my peers was just different, especially like my freshman year when I'm in classes where I'm the only Black person. I never experienced that before until my freshman
So
year.
what was that like for you? Because my experience was the opposite. I always did like that was my only experience
Right.
until like even from elementary all the way through even through college.
Mhm.
So what was that like? Like how at what point did you start to feel comfortable?
Um, Probably a couple weeks into the school year, just because like I feel like I'm one of those people that can pretty much fit in anywhere if I need to. At first I just had to kind of feel it out, like, okay, what's going on? It's just a totally new environment. Like the way that they taught was different. Like they were way more strict on us than in the public school system, as far as like how much homework, being diligent on what type of clothes we wear. Like we had to wear uniforms and stuff like that, have khakis on and collar shirts and tuck our shirts in every day, all that type of stuff. So it was just kind of like a little different to me. But once I got adjusted, I just kind of took off and became just like, I feel like everywhere I go, I kind of become like the favorite or whatever I have going on. So I know for a fact, like a lot of my teachers love me.
So do you feel like any of those lessons served you after high school as far as like the self-discipline and like wearing certain things? How so?
Absolutely. Absolutely. The self-discipline part, for sure, just because when I was going there, it's one of those things where if you don't get it done yourself, it's not going to get done, because it's not like, when you're in high school, you kind of get to that point where you smelling yourself now, you getting a little older, you get a driver's license, all of that type of stuff. And so, and I lost my train of thought.
You start to smell yourself, you get your license.
Yeah, you get your license, so it's just a lot of stuff going on at one time, and it's like, okay, you get a little taste of adulthood where it's like, okay, if I don't put no gas in this car is not going anywhere, right? If I don't get this homework done, I can't play football tonight. I can't play at the game tonight, whatever the case is. And so what I realized is just the simple stuff, just me having to do my homework and stuff. Now it's like when I'm working, it's still instilled in me. I don't have to have somebody over my shoulder, like watching me or like, hey, did you do this? Hey, did you do that? Nah, I did it. It needed to
Okay.
be done, so I did it.
So that brings me to Morehouse. So you get into Morehouse, you start attending as a freshman. Tell me what that experience was like coming there as a freshman, getting acclimated, taking classes, and then when did you reach the point where you realized, you know what, this just isn't for me?
Yeah, it's funny because Morehouse was pretty much the complete opposite. Like my high school was an all boys school, just like Morehouse is an all boys school, right? So my high school and my college experience pretty much all boys schools. But I didn't have a problem with that because what I realized is in high school when I was in the all boys setting, it made it much easier to learn because you don't
You
have
could focus.
right. And I always tell people this. I'm like, in my 4 years of going to that high school, we probably had one fight. And it
Mm.
was two of my friends that I know that was just like, of course, there's probably more fights than that, but like one fight that actually happened during school was just something that happened in the bathroom with a couple of my friends. And I always tell people, I'm like, when you think about it, for high school boys, what are you fighting over if it's not women?
What's the answer?
Nothing. Nothing. And I know it because I've seen it with my own eyes. Nobody in here is fighting about anything. What are we fighting about?
That's great.
You
That's
know, you
great.
either fighting over a woman or you fighting to try to prove something in front of some women. But it's like once you remove that, bring your ego down. It's just us.
Nice.
It's
Nice.
And so when I went to Morehouse, getting acclimated was pretty easy just because I felt like, okay, now I'm finally back around my people. I feel comfortable, you know what I'm saying? But the weird thing I think that I couldn't get adjusted to, especially my freshman year, excuse me, my freshman year, this was one of the things that threw me off, and I think it kind of changed my collegiate trajectory. I had an 8 a.m. class, right? And it was a Spanish class. It was a honor Spanish class, I'm pretty sure. Like it was either like a sophomore level or like junior level Spanish class or something like that, because I was just like super good at Spanish. Cool. So it's 8 a.m. and I'm a freshman in college. You know, I'm finally getting used to some freedom. I can stay out whatever time of night. I could whatever, right? So an 8 a.m. class is kind of hard for me as a 17-year-old, 18-year-old freshman, right? And so what I realized is I would go to class and I'm going in there, I'm getting A's on everything. Like we didn't have any homework and we didn't have any quizzes. We only had tests, right? And so on my tests, like I never scored lower than a 90% on any of my tests. But I end up flunking that class because I had missed so many classes.
Oh, wow.
Right. And so I'm like, now me looking back at it, it wasn't a good reason for me to want to stop school, because now I understand what that was trying to teach me. Like, regardless, you need to be showing up every day. That was my lesson that I was supposed to learn from that. No matter how good you are at something, you need to be showing up every day. Now, of course, at
Yes.
17, 18 years old, I can't really see that that's what's going on. But at that point, the way that my mind worked at that time was, okay, if I have an A in this class and you just flunk me because I missed 8 classes or whatever the case is, and we never had to turn in homework, why does it even matter if I'm in the class or whatever, right? And so I'm like, I'm a little skewed about this system right here, because it's not just based off of performance. If I got an A in this class and you flunk me and now you're trying to tell me, hey, but yeah, you should still consider study abroad because you're really good at Spanish. That's going in one ear and out the other. I don't even want to hear about study abroad at this point. You just flunked me, right? So that was like one of my first things. So I'm just like, what's going on here? This is not what I expected it to be. And then I think by the end of my freshman year is when I really started looking on YouTube. Like I think I was one of those people that got lucky because, like as I said, I made music and stuff, right? So that was my introduction to YouTube. So in high school, I'm getting on YouTube trying to figure out, okay, how can I make an echo in this program, or how can I fade this song out, or how can I make my vocals more cleaner? How can I use an equalizer, right? So I'm doing these things in high school, just getting on YouTube, trying to figure out how to use my music programs a little better, right? And I feel like that was one of the things that kind of gave me a jump start, because now when I talk to my brother about this all the time, and I'm like, at that time, this was like probably what, 2008, 2009, something like that. At that time, you didn't really have that many people going on YouTube to do anything. So I'm like, okay,
Mm.
unless you was on here kind of watching some funny videos or something, you didn't really realize how much information was on here for you to learn. And so I'm like super grateful that at that time I was making music and I was doing something that forced me to have to go to YouTube and teach myself, because I feel like that kind of was my jump start to where it's like, okay, I know I can go learn it on YouTube. I was thinking this, 15 years ago. I'm like, I know I can go learn it on YouTube. And so when I'm my freshman year of college, the end of my freshman year, I'm just looking, I'm like, here I go. I'm back learning more stuff on YouTube than I am in this classroom. So I'm like, what's going on right now? I started to feel like it was a scam kind of. I'm like, why am I learning more over here than I'm learning in here, and I'm paying y'all all of this money? Some is not adding up.